The NFSA's Learning and Development team has completely restructured and revamped its Layout Technician class. The Layout Technician pathway has changed the way designers are being taught while maintaining the core concepts, content, and topics. Using real-world scenarios to provide deeper learning and more engaging activities, the Layout Technician pathway is good for new designers or seasoned veterans looking to learn a new trick or two. The Layout Technician pathway was designed to take someone with basic knowledge in math, physical science, and drafting skills and teach them to be productive in basic sprinkler layout and detailing. Visit nfsa.org and click on Learning to learn more or to sign up now, or stick around for the rest of this episode.
Like and subscribe.
Hey everybody, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Fire Sprinkler Podcast. On this episode, I have Mike Joanis from NFSA, and we are going to be talking about a new online training program that they have. But before we get started with that, Mike, how's it going today?
Doing well, Chris. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No problem. We've been going back and forth, just kind of chatting here. Prior to the episode, there was a ton of things that we talked about that I wish we were recorded, but we didn't. So we got to try to lock that magic in again when we get going here. Before we get started on this new training program that you guys have, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself and what you do with NFSA?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again. My name's Mike Joanis. I hate to admit it, but I'm a fire protection engineer. Been doing sprinkler and fire protection for 30 years. Started as a volunteer firefighter. That's how I learned there was even such a thing as fire protection engineering, and found my way into the University of Maryland. And from then, first half of my career, a little bit of code consulting with some engineering firms, but the bulk of my time was as a sprinkler contractor. So for about 20 years before I came to NFSA, I was a sprinkler contractor. And whether I was a design manager, project manager for a contractor, or at the end, the last 10, 11 years, I had a partner and we had our own business. So I came to NFSA a couple of years ago, a little over 2 years ago, as the chief engineer. And at NFSA, I'm responsible for delivery of technical services. So anybody who's familiar with NFSA knows the buzzwords, the Expert of the Day program, the EOD program, the Tech Notes, the Tech Tuesdays. But what we're talking about today is some of our learning and development opportunities, some of our straight-on training programs, which we're all involved in on the technical side.
Now, I heard a rumor the other day that you guys, and I don't know if this is public or not, so I can either stop conversation now or continue on later, but are you guys going to be starting to do the Tech Tuesdays live? Or have you already started doing them live?
The Tech Tuesdays just started live, so we changed the time and we changed them to be live. And part of the reason for that was, and it goes along with what we're talking about today, was to better engage the students. So we knew that there was a lot of people that would come to Tech Tuesdays. They're looking for their 1 hour. They're looking for their CEU. And when it was done previously, it was pre-recorded. It was early in the day. It was a little tough for the West Coasters, to be starting at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. And we really didn't have any engagement in it. It was just me or one of the other technical folks with a PowerPoint presentation, just lecturing,
right,
and giving him great information, great topics. If you're going to spend an hour, you'd get, as a sprinkler person, you could get something out of it because it was very, very specific to what it is we do in our industry. But the time change and going live was to engage students. So we'll have activities, we'll have quick little survey questions, we'll have some, back and forth going on, which, believe it or not, this is the way the world is today, Chris. I mean, we get 200 people on my last Tech Tuesday was 200 people on the call. We had dozens of chat questions. We had a couple quick activities for folks to do and, start the conversation with an essential question, get people thinking. And that's the point. Yeah. And that's a lot of what we're doing with this layout technician classes, trying to better engage our students and get them invested in what we're doing.
Is there a possibility that Tech Tuesdays may be a future podcast that you're going to be coming out with, releasing the episodes maybe the week after?
Yeah, we can. We they do get recorded. But again, the goal is to do them live so that we can get folks engaged and get people thinking and do projects with it and have some back and forth, rather than just, listening to a PowerPoint presentation. I'll be honest with you, this is new to me. I've been doing these things for a long time, and I'm so used to my PowerPoint presentations and all the information I need. We do a new course an estimating course. So I'm not so sure if anybody else has an estimating class. So we do a 2-day in-person class for estimators, and we actually have a sample project. We review that sample project, all the applicable codes and standards, all the contract documents, and then we put together an estimate and a proposal and in groups. And then we do a survey of a space and we do another estimate. But the point of the conversation is that I do that 2-day class without a single PowerPoint slide. And I don't think I could have ever done that before.
Right.
But it's just our new way of having resources. We have a participation guide for the students that they can follow along, and then all their resources available electronically. Even when we're in person, there's 30 or 40 different documents that we keep going back and forth to during the class.
Well, and it all depends, like when you have the engagement in a conversation, it's a lot easier presentation wise. When I'm doing presentations here in Canada for local fire departments or for different organizations in Canada, if you have no engagement with the people who are listening to the presenters, not the presentees, but the audience, you have a presentation that goes from, you're supposed to have an hour and a half, but if you have no questions, dialogue, back and forth, your presentation's a quick 35 minutes and you're stuck there like, so you guys like stuff?
And it's been tough to, talking about our layout technician class specifically. I'll give you a little history. We've done this class for decades. It's a 2-week, beginner to intermediate layout technician designer class where we throw the kitchen sink at them, everything you need to know about being a designer or a layout technician to get you started. And for a couple decades, that was done in person. Mm-hmm. And, we used to do it in different parts of the country. We used to do it at NFSA's headquarters, come in 2 weeks, 40 hours a week in person, get it done.
That's good.
And then COVID happens. So unfortunately, we took it and went virtual, and we knew we couldn't have people sit on the computer screen for 8 hours a day for 5-10 days in a row. So we did spread it out a little bit. But it's tough. It's tough trying to get some of those advanced topics that we're doing. We're trying to do projects together online. We're trying to do hydraulic calculations by hand together online. So with what we're doing with redesigning the class is we're splitting it up to be, a beginning fundamentals piece, which is fundamentals of fire sprinkler that we do in e-learning modules, instructor-led e-learning modules virtually, and then we shift it to an application piece where we actually go in person at the end of our new course for 3 days and make it project based. So one of the other switches is to try to make everything that we do. It's pretty easy to say, let's talk about the skylight rule. It's 32 square feet. It's NFPA 13, section XYZ PDQ. I know they're numbers, not letters, but you get the point, right? And you just go and look in the book, or we're going to give you an actual document, an actual drawing, an actual project that has a skylight in the project.
Does it apply? Does it not apply?
And as we work through the skylight rule, for an example, we're working through it in our project, if anybody's ever done our layout technician class before, we call it Pancho's Mexican Restaurant. That's the project. It's in a strip mall. Okay. And for this class, we're adding all kinds of other components to that project, whether it's skylights, rated glass walls or windows, exterior overhangs, clouded ceilings we're adding to the project. So the intent is to, just like a layout technician, a designer would, you get a project, now you have to step through the process of managing it, understanding it, finding the information. What does the drawing say? What is the information we have? What does the code or standard say? What do the contract documents say? And how are we going to best, move forward with actually doing a design and laying it out?
The course is both online and in person?
Yep. So the first piece of it, the first segment is e-learning modules. When you sign up for the class, you get the website, you can work through those at your own pace. And then the second half of it is 3 days in person.
Right. And where do those take place?
So currently this year, let's see, well, I got it on my computer screen here. The first one is in Lithicum Heights at our headquarters near Baltimore. So the first one that's in person is June 14th, 15th, and 16th, and that's at NFSA Headquarters. Okay. And then we have 2 more this year at NFSA Headquarters. And like I was mentioning before we started, we have one up in Hartford, Connecticut at the Connecticut Fire Academy. And quite frankly, as we get this up and running, we're going to roll out more in-person locations around the country. I'm sure NFSA headquarters will probably be one of the predominant locations, but we'll roll those 3-day application pieces out across the country.
Right. What kind of resources are available? The NFSA headquarters, it's a place I've heard about a lot, but I'm not as familiar with resources that they have there. What can you describe a little bit about the NFSA resources, NFSA headquarters? I'm curious.
Yes. So NFSA's headquarters is outside of Baltimore. It's near BWI Airport. I mean, you could almost walk from BWI Airport to the office. It's quite close. And we just have a nice big training facility. We have our offices there, but then we have, the side-by-side demonstration units outside. We have the valve trailer. And then of course, we're sprinkler nerds. So it makes the wall behind you look, simple compared to all the pieces, parts, and
right.
everything you want to put your hand on. We have the ability to put our hands on it there in the office, whether it's valves, different types of pipes, sprinklers. A lot of that stuff we can just literally grab and share with the class. And that
you guys don't have.
What's that?
I do have a brand new, never installed SuperText valve sitting on the ground over there.
There you go.
They're few and far between to find one. I've been offered a lot of money just for the gaskets.
Because
they don't make them anymore, right? I've been offered a lot of money just for the gaskets, but I'm just waiting until I get my, as the podcast grows, I can throw more resources out there. My intention is to have similar type of setup with trailers and side-by-side burn demonstrations here in Canada. So I can start doing things like that here as well.
Yeah. And then the classes, the layout technician classes it's full on, man. We're into it. We're in and out of the codes. We're in and out of the standards. So obviously we have all the resources there for that as well. If you're so inclined during a break and you want to go look at a 1950, X edition of NFPA 13, it's there. You can go see. Yeah.
Okay.
You can go and take a look.
Starting the layout technician pathway, it starts out with an online portion. What kind of things are you getting into if you're looking to get into the design field, going from the field or from the design or something like that? What's going to be expected? How many hours of online training are there going to be? Can you complete it as fast as possible, or is it set up like you have to do this on Monday, you have to do this on Tuesday, you have to do this on Wednesday?
No, there's certainly an order to it. There's an order of how you work your way through it, but it is self-paced. The online e-learning modules are self-paced. Your goal is to, when you register, when you sign up for the class, is in advance when your 3-day in-person class is going to be. So if the first one is in June, the middle of June at NFSA headquarters, when you sign up for the class, a month or two in advance, you're going to get all those e-learning modules. And your end goal is to be ready for the in-person piece that you've signed up for. But you can move through them at your own pace. And then, of course, what we're doing is we're going to support that with access to the instructors while you're doing that e-learning module. So you'll have access to other class members,
right?
Other folks that are in the class at the same time working through the e-learning modules, as well as access to staff for questions, comments, concerns. And we're talking about some of the upfront stuff. What's the role of what's the role of a layout technician? What are designers supposed to be doing? What's the purpose of what we're doing? Right. How do you read drawings? What are the parts of a sprinkler system? What are the parts of a sprinkler? How does a wet system work? How does a dry system work? And all those good fundamentals that we work through. And they're interactive too. They have activities that go with them. We've been doing a lot with Revit and 3D modeling, and your ability to be able to take a sprinkler or a dry valve and actually, view it in all kinds of different directions and work your way around it and see all the different pieces, parts. And
do you guys utilize any of the manufacturers' kind of technology that they've created? I know Viking has an excellent. I was there last weekend doing a tour, and they showed me the virtual VR, which I unfortunately made a video of myself doing it. And I always laugh when my kids got one of the VR headsets, and you walk into a room and they're just swinging their arms around doing whatever they're doing. They're doing something. I don't know what it is. But I made a video of myself in the virtual resetting a dry valve, resetting a foam system, things like that. And it's unreal. Do you guys use resources like that? Do you have your own, or do you use manufacturers?
For the models, for the Revit models, we use the manufacturers. Yeah, we're not going to recreate that on our own. They basically, they'll give you basically anything you're looking for their pieces, parts, and their valves, their drive valves, their pre-action valves, their everything. So we use that. We're not quite to the virtual reality level. I would say our NFSA's biggest jump into the virtual reality was with the Home Fire Sprinkler Coalition, and we burned some houses that we had acquired to do their virtual reality demonstration of a home fire. And I've been through Viking's virtual reality as well. And that's great because you can actually put your hands on a valve and open and close the main drain, open and close the trim line, reset the valve. But we're trying to make it interactive. So you're not just staring at a static picture, of a sprinkler or a valve.
What type of experience going into the layout technician pathway are you guys looking for? Is it something that somebody fresh out of high school doesn't know anything about sprinkler systems can kind of jump into? Or are you looking for somebody who's maybe been in the field for, 5-6 years, finished his apprenticeship, is looking for the next step, or a 40-year installer whose shoulders are shot and it just wants to get out of the field and into the office? Is it built for everybody, or is it geared more towards the inexperienced, like when the one sprinkler goes off, they all go off kind of attitude and mentality?
Yeah, I would say it's geared for everybody because we actually, quite frankly, we take a lot of folks. There's a lot of our main customers for this layout technician pathway or our previous class. And a lot of employers literally will send all their new designers, all their new estimators, all their new folks within the first, 0 to 6 months of being an employee through this class. We've actually recently had folks from the Chicago Fire Department, from their fire prevention office, class, and their feedback, while they're not going to go back to the Chicago Fire Department and sit down in front of HydroCAD or SprintCAD and actually lay out sprinklers, but their appreciation for everything that goes into doing what a designer or a layout technician does, and that's their feedback, is that they just they had no idea how much it takes and what goes into actually, putting together a set of plans and hydraulic calculations. Right. So we see it all. We see folks that are in the field that come out of the field and become designers. Folks that just got hired, literally. Some of them are like, I just got hired. Today is my first day. The company said, start today, and you're starting in this course.
Yeah.
And we do get folks that are experienced. Sometimes we'll get designers that have been doing it for a year or two. And I think they quickly realize that they've learned a lot of good things, but maybe, it's like anything else. When you're learning by doing, sometimes you may get into some bad habits. A lot of the folks that come that have a little bit of design or layout technician experience, they're not sure where it comes from or why it's that way, or they were just told by a colleague or their design manager, this is the way you do it. Right. And now it's a lot of, well, where does that come from? Why is that the case? What allows everything in NFPA 13 is, everything in there has exceptions and conditions, and there's nothing that's literal in NFPA 13, right? It all has, are you in the right chapter? Is it on the right type of system? Is it the right type of material? And we all know that if it was one size fit all, it would be a lot easier. And we know that's not the case. It just depends on what we're doing. So we spend a lot of time jumping back and forth in and out of NFPA 13.
Awesome. How long? So you mentioned like you're given the resources kind of ahead of time, and then it's up to you to make sure that everything gets done. Generally speaking, if a guy wants to, nose to the grindstone, wants to get everything done, is the online portion a 2 or 3 day thing? Is it a 4-hour thing? Like, how long is each of the modules, and how many modules are there in the beginning?
Let's see. I have it on the screen here. So it looks like there's 23 different modules. Okay. And it's taking the place of what would have been about the first 5 days of our previous course. So okay. It's going to be a good 40 hours worth of content.
Right.
And then again, depending on the activities and the reading that you do, there's obviously, not obviously, maybe folks don't know, but the class is based on our layout technician handbook that comes with the course. So this is the second edition. We have the third edition of this book that's going to be with our new layout technician course. So the updated textbook goes with it. So, you have reading assignments to do, you have exercises to do, but it's probably about a 40-hour effort to get through that piece.
Is that new version of the handbook out now?
Unfortunately, it is being printed. Literally, it's being printed as we speak. So it's coming.
Is there a pre-order?
I don't believe the pre-order is up on the website yet.
Okay, because that's on my list of books to get. I like to read. I'm a huge sprinkler nerd. If you haven't noticed, anybody, as I do a podcast on fire protection, so it immediately falls into the giant nerd category. But
as a sprinkler contractor and a designer, fire protection engineer, there's a few books I always go to. The Fire Protection Handbook. I have Dr. Brian from the University of Maryland's hydraulics book. I have a couple others from Oklahoma State. But this layout technician book is kind of, soup to nuts, start to finish, every which way is a Sunday. And it's amazing how many times I go back in there to find an equation, find, why something is the way it is. And it's a great resource. And it comes with the class, and it's how we work our way through that course.
Yeah. And you know what another good resource is that I find myself going to all the time is the Expert of the Day handbooks that you guys have come out with Joe Meyer. Like those things are just fun. Like that's almost a you call it a coffee table book. You just leave it on the table, and every once in a while you flip through it and you're like, oh yeah, okay, there it is. That's a book I just refer to. Just if you're working away doing your sprinkler work and you have a question, I would say there's a really good chance that one out of the 2,800 questions that's in the EOD handbook is matches or pretty closely matches. And if it doesn't, you can always submit it as a new EOD Expert of the Day question. And we've been doing pretty well with those. There's it's about a 24-hour turnaround time. Sometimes, I don't think it's not taking us any longer than a day to get those turned around. And it's nice. I enjoy doing them. It's really nice when you can get somebody an answer to a technical question that you just know when they read it, the light bulb's going to go off and go, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize there was another section on that general storage issue, or I didn't know there was a definition for that term in at the beginning of NFPA 13 in the definitions. Right.
So I enjoy that. I really enjoy it.
And that's kind of one of the things with this industry is everybody in this industry is, number one, they're all really competitive and they're all really proud. Nobody wants to, the questions like that, nobody really wants to be wrong, which is justified. Nobody wants to be wrong, especially when it comes to life safety.
Right. But do you think, you can use, NFSA is a great resource. I kind of liken it to fire departments, right? Fire departments are very provincial to their specific city or town or township or whatever you call them where you are, right? And you all live all the fire departments a lot of times live in their own little worlds of what they do and how they operate. And I think sprinkler contractors are a lot the same, right? We all go back into our environments where we're just working hard, and NFSA is a great resource sometimes to get a second opinion, ask a technical question, get yourself exposed to something that you may not have seen before in your own little, world where you live doing sprinkler every day, all day long. And it's a great resource.
Absolutely. The in-house portion of the layout technical pathway, in-house like you said, at the NFSA headquarters, it's say 8 hours a day for 3 days in a row.
3 full days in person, 8 hours a day, and it's project based. So we're doing actual layout for our ponchos and our strip mall project, and we're actually doing the hand calculations for that as well. I will say some people do gristle at the hand calculations, and I'm, you can tell from looking at me on the screen here, I'm a crusty old sprinkler guy. I had to have a slide rule when I went to college. I had to learn how to do hydraulic calculations by hand. But I will tell you, if you're a layout technician or a designer or an estimator, working for a sprinkler company, and you understand the principles that it takes to do a hydraulic calculation by hand, right? Just simple flow through an orifice based on the pressure and the size of the orifice, hydrant flow, calculating your hydrant flow test flows, doing, hydraulic gradients on the exponential graph, doing simple friction loss calculations, elevation change. again, finding from many, many years that designers and layout technicians would bring me a result of a calculation they did on the software, and they say it doesn't work. And I'd say, well, what do you mean it doesn't work? And tell me about your system. Well, I got 100 pounds static, 90 pounds residual, and I'm doing a 2-story apartment building. It's like, well, please don't tell me it doesn't work. I don't need to be a rocket scientist with hydraulics to understand that something's not quite right. And so a lot of it is not that you're going to do that on a day-to-day basis, but if you don't understand the relationships between the different, between flow and pressure and equivalent K factors, and what happens if you go from a 5.6 to an 8 K factor sprinkler? I mean, what does that mean? What's the big deal?
Yeah.
Well, it's changing the end head pressure. It's changing the pressure needed to flow the same amount of water. And I think folks really enjoy it. They go into it with oh darn, I got to get the calculator out and do some math to, I never really understood that that's how that worked, or the relationship between flow and pressure in this particular case, or what difference does it make if the C factor for the type of pipe goes from 100 to 120? Right. And you can see it when you're doing it by hand. You can see it and feel it and understand how it makes a difference.
It's we had to do Handcalcs when I was in trade school. They made the like apprentices as an apprentice. We had to do Handcalcs in basic, so it was understanding flow and understanding pipe sizes and C factors and stuff like that. Creating a line equivalent K factor for lines and stuff like that. That was all included in our trade school, which I think the intention at the time was to give a kind of mutual respect. This is what is involved in it. I don't know if it really hit home with a lot of the guys out there. Everybody just thinks it's lines and circles on paper. I'm a designer as well as a fitter, so I understand both jobs have their very unique challenges. Designing a sprinkler system seems, there the camera goes again. Designing a sprinkler system seems like a very, very, lines and circles kind of situation. But then once you actually have to do it for that extended period of time, like the mental drain that you have on that system it's a pretty manually or mentally taxing process.
Yeah. I mean, being a good layout technician, it's first of all, to the companies that you work for, you're invaluable. You're a little bit of a cog in the wheel of everything that goes from taking something that you sold to making sure it gets done right, good quality, it's efficient to install, labor wise, material wise, it's, what's best for the customer. But it's a lot of moving parts. And I always say to layout technicians, if there was 8 variables and I just gave you the answer to all 8 variables, it wouldn't be any fun. There would be no challenge to it. It would be, it'd be just simple processing information, take this in and put it out the other side.
Yep.
But what makes it fun and exciting is you don't know, you may not know everything all the time. You may have to go find the information. You may have to interpret the information. You may find, believe it or not, the answer to everything is not an NFPA 13. It doesn't address every single situation that you're going to come upon.
Yep.
And the more that you can understand it and appreciate it, and even if it is to the point of doing hydraulic calculations and appreciating what it takes and what the variables are, it just makes you better at what you do. And it's very taxing to constantly be working, but it's so rewarding when you get to the end of it and you're like, I made a lot of good decisions here. I investigated this process. I understood it. I understood the purpose of the building, why it's doing what it's doing, why it's built the way it is, what was important to the owner and how we needed to install it, phasing, and, how to get pipe in there. And it's great. I mean, it's a great career because you can spend your entire career as a designer and a layout technician learning something new.
Right.
Every day.
One good designer can keep 10 to 15 fitters busy.
Oh yeah.
One bad designer ruin 10 to 15 different projects overnight, right? One bad day at the office can ruin multiple projects and cost a lot of money, right? So it's the value of designer training is You know, it's worth its weight in gold to have good technicians and good designers out there making sure that the systems are going in, as well as having, like you said, understanding how that system goes in, understanding that, you know, the joke I make with my guys now, I used to be a fitter, so I understand how the pipe goes in. I understand the weight. I understand manipulating the pipe. I understand things like that. But when you go on job sites and maybe it took a little while longer to get that piece of 8-inch into the bar joist or something like that, because I probably should have cut it at, you know, at 8 foot lengths or at 7'6" lengths, but I wanted to stretch it and went to 10.5s. You know, just less couplings, things like that. The joke I always make with the guys in the field, well, it didn't take me that long to install it on the computer, guys. Like it only weighs
Right.
that much. Like, what are you talking about? Why is it taking you so long to do? It only took me a day to draw it up. Come on. Right.
And I think a lot of this layout technician is some of the technician class is some of those basics. Like, what are those important factors? Are you going to learn everything about putting every different type of sprinkler system in 2 weeks? Of course you're not. But what we want you to be able to do is we want you to be able to think about what you're doing, appreciate what the variables are, and say, hey, wait a minute, I need to go think about this. Or, hey, wait a minute, I got to go get some more information. Or, you know, is this applicable? This obstruction rule, is it applicable with what I'm doing here? And it's that kind of basic knowledge or understanding that allows you to literally spend, you know, the rest of your career learning more of those nuances, learning more. You know, you could be a layout technician for many years and never do, you know, a deluge system. So now your challenge is taking what you've learned and doing a deluge system on a transformer outside, or doing a -10 freezer. Or you could spend many years doing, you know, residential apartment buildings, and now now you're starting to do warehouses, storage applications, and you know, in racks and pick facilities and all kinds of other things, conveyor belts. So that's the greatest part about doing this, is you just get exposed to something new all the time, and
Yeah.
it's fun.
And in adding on to what you've said there is the other good thing with both fitters and designers is the key takeaway with everything is that you're never done learning. Do not think that just because you've graduated, you've ticketed out, you've got your journeyman certification, whatever aspect of the industry you're in, you're never done. They roll out
Mhm.
a new book this thick every 3 years, right? And they don't just do it to print paper, right? There's always changes in it. There's always updates to the codes. There's always new technology coming out. And that's why I do the podcast. It lets me sit down and talk to the smartest people in the industry about the most, you know, the newest technology, the newest training, the newest products, everything that's out there. I get the opportunity to learn about it usually first. So it's awesome.
Yeah, and
And
that's a great part for me for working at NFSA. You know, I
yeah,
came from my little world where we were a $14 million a year sprinkler business, and you know, I understood codes and standards and kind of knew the process and had done a few NFPA things. But obviously, coming here for the last few years, it's a whole new level. It's a whole new exposure to things that I hadn't been exposed to before. So, in
it's
the same light,
animal in developing, right?
yeah, yeah. And
Awesome.
you know, Dr. Bryan at the University of Maryland he used to say it all the time. He says, "Yep, back in the olden days, it'd be Friday and we all had to leave and catch our planes. And one person would say 15 feet, and the other person would say 16 feet, and we'd split the difference and just call it 15.5. And a lot of it was by feel and consensus. And nowadays, so much more of it, and his whole purpose in life was to make so much more of it based on science, right?
Right.
Based on science and data and research, and the codes and standards the way they work today. You know, you need to come prepared with your data, with your research, with your information
Yeah.
to affect change.
Early on years ago, I did an episode with Hasu Doshi, and he was one of the developers of the hydraulic calculation back in the 70s.
Mhm.
So you're speaking of, I want 16, I want 15. The hydraulic calculation, the design criteria for light hazard, ordinary hazard, 1 and 2, and extra hazard were strictly based off of the pipe scheduled system, how much water they got out of them. Some of the system with the pipe scheduled would get 0.07. Some of them got
Yeah,
0.12. So they
yeah,
go with 1. This is now your light hazard. It
yeah.
wasn't as scientifically based as possible. Now they've done the studies to confirm, you know, things like water consumption and fire deterioration and stuff like that. But back in the 70s, that was how they developed that curve. Your design curve was just the average amount of water that you get out of a system that was basically 2 sprinklers for 1 inch? Yeah, 2 sprinklers for 1 inch.
Yeah.
For inch and a, yeah, let's do that.
Earlier today, we were talking about CPVC pipe and being listed, and the question came up as well, how come steel pipe doesn't have to be listed for a sprinkler system? And I'm sitting there thinking, and I'm like, well, probably because it's been around in sprinkler systems since 50 or 60, and it's kind of time tested and approved that way. It's not listed. We didn't get it specifically tested and listed, but man, it's been doing a good job for 150 years.
I'd say that, yeah.
Pretty good job.
And
Yeah.
it's the other thing with that as well is the different environments that the CPVC system is being installed to. It's not a new technology, but it is being used in newer applications every day. So the way the technology has changed from 1860, 1870, where it's wood pipe with lead or steel pipe with lead in it, and when a fire gets to a certain temperature, you get lead just opens up a hole in the pipe, right? The technology in that application back then might have been acceptable, but that's not how systems work now. Same principles, heat, water, but
As an industry and as codes and standards, I think sometimes we move painfully slow to embrace new technology, but it's there, and it does happen all the time. Whether it's residential systems, fast response sprinklers, nitrogen instead of air, dry valves that are externally resettable, dry valves that are at 10 and 13 to 1 differentials versus the old school 5 to 6. I mean, they happen. And then on the storage side, I think the people who build these facilities are still moving much faster than we are, but man, we've come a long way to catch up.
yeah, I don't necessarily, I mean, I've always been very vocal. I don't necessarily say that the externally resetting dry valve is a benefit to the industry. The good thing it is for the fitters that get the call at 2 a.m, because if a maintenance guy goes in and hits that external reset and says, I've already reset the system for you. Did you drain it? No. I'm going to need your Wi-Fi password and a good comfy chair while I drain it through the 3/4 drain in the back, because don't touch the valve if you don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Sure, you can reach with it, but I mean, come on. A
Yeah.
lesson learned, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Mike, this has been awesome. We went off topic a little bit, but we managed to stay pretty close to everything regarding the layout technician pathway. Is it going to be you that's teaching the program?
There's several instructors. So we have myself and another fire protection engineer, and then we have codes and standards specialists. We have Vince and we have Roland Asp and Jeff Fugo, and it's the usual crew of instructors. So you get fire protection engineers, previous building officials, fire officials, code officials, the other designers, layout technicians. So yeah, it's a good group.
Awesome. Mike, thanks for coming on the podcast and talking about this. Is this program available now?
Yeah, you can go nfsa.org and you hit on the learning tab, which is our tab for all of our training, and it's right there in the banner, the layout technician pathway, and it's available to register for as well.
Awesome. And is it available for anybody? Do you have to be an NFSA member to participate in this course?
No, we'll be more than happy to take extra money from you for not being a member, but I'm pretty sure if you're going to take the class, it's going to be more beneficial to be a member and get the discount.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Awesome, Mike. Thanks for coming on to the podcast and talking about this program. It's been great.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.